The Grand Council chambers of Concordance Station Zenith resembled nothing so much as a coliseum built for words instead of blood. Captain Alexandra Chen stood at the human delegation's podium, positioned, she'd noted on her first day, in the outermost ring where the newest and least consequential members waited to speak, and watched War Chief Drakmar of the Kral Dominion present what he called a territorial reorganization proposal. The chamber's architecture told the story of galactic hierarchy without requiring explanation. At the center, beneath a dome that showed the triple stars of the neutral system in real-time magnificence, sat High Arbiter Velzen's elevated seat. The avian diplomat's bronze feathers caught the starlight as he presided with the calculated disinterest of someone who'd mediated thousands of such sessions. Around him, in concentric rings, stood the podiums of 47 member species, arranged by influence, military strength, and territorial holdings. Humanity occupied Ring 7, the outermost ring. The ring reserved for species who'd barely proven they could maintain faster-than-light travel, let alone project power beyond their home systems. Alexandra had served in Earth's Unified Defense Command for 12 years before accepting this diplomatic posting. She knew what military professionals looked like, and Drakmar was exactly that. 7 feet of scaled muscle and predatory certainty, every movement speaking of a species that had evolved to kill and had never stopped refining the practice. His species held 12 star systems, commanded the 3rd largest fleet in known space, and had a documented history of absorbing weaker species' territories through what they termed administrative integration. The holographic display floating above the chamber's center currently showed 3 human colony worlds: New Prosperity, Kepler's Hope, and Redemption. The mathematical reality is simple, Drakmar said, his translator rendering his growling speech into standard diplomatic language. These 3 systems lie adjacent to Kral administrative space. Their human populations total approximately 43 million, insignificant by galactic standards. Their defensive capabilities consist of outdated platforms and a handful of system defense craft that our intelligence classifies as barely functional. He gestured, and the hologram zoomed to show human defensive installations. The Concordance's charter states that territorial administration should reflect capability. Humanity has demonstrated no capability to properly secure these systems against piracy, hostile incursion, or commercial disruption. Alexandra's neural implant vibrated with an incoming encrypted message from Commander Marcus Webb. Back on Earth. Stall. Observe. Do not provoke. She touched her temple in subtle acknowledgement, maintaining her expression of polite attention. 15 years. That's how long humanity had been part of this galactic community. 15 years of being the newest species at the table, the ones everyone else had already dismissed as technologically inferior and militarily negligible, before humanity had even finished learning the proper diplomatic protocols. The Kral Dominion proposes administrative oversight of these 3 systems, Drakmar continued. Human populations would maintain residence rights and commercial freedoms. The Dominion would merely provide proper security infrastructure and efficient governance. All we require is humanity's formal acknowledgement that they lack the capability to properly administer these territories themselves. The chamber buzzed with the multilingual murmur of 46 other species calculating their own interests. Alexandra recognized the sound. She'd heard it in 6 previous sessions where the Krayal had made similar proposals to the Venturi Collective, the Margath Union, and the Tolan Sphere. In each case, the targeted species had accepted administrative oversight rather than face Kral military action. The Venturi now held 2 systems instead of 5. The Margath Union had been reduced to their homeworld. The Tolan Sphere no longer existed as an independent entity. Ambassador Liss of the Tethran Commonwealth caught Alexandra's eye from her podium in Ring 3. The insectoid diplomat's compound eyes reflected genuine concern, but she remained silent. The Tethran had their own borders to worry about, their own species to protect. Interfering with Kral expansion would only paint a target on their own territories. High Arbiter Velzen's voice cut through the murmuring. "Does the human delegation wish to respond to this proposal?" Alexandra stood, her movements carrying the disciplined precision of her military background. She'd worn her formal diplomatic uniform rather than anything suggesting military authority, dark blue with minimal insignia, designed to project competence without threat. Her appearance suggested late 30s, though rejuvenation treatments made such estimates unreliable. What mattered was the way she carried herself, calm, centered, and completely controlled. "The human delegation thanks War Chief Drakmar for his presentation," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "However, we require time to consult with Earth's government before responding to such a significant proposal. Humanity requests a recess to properly consider all implications." Drakmar's translator rendered what might have been a laugh. "Captain Chen, your species has held these territories for barely a decade. How much consultation could possibly be required? The mathematics are simple. We offer protection you cannot provide, administration you cannot maintain, and security you cannot guarantee. Accept our oversight, or watch your colonists suffer the consequences of your pride." There it was. The threat, delivered with just enough diplomatic phrasing to maintain plausible deniability while making the reality perfectly clear. Accept subjugation or face military action. Alexandra's neural implant vibrated again. Webb's second message contained no words, just a data packet that downloaded into her consciousness in the space of a heartbeat. Fleet positions, tactical assessments, authorization codes, and one simple addendum. Make them show their hand completely. We need everything on record. "War Chief Drakmar," Alexandra said, maintaining her professional tone, "could you clarify what you mean by consequences? The Concordance Charter guarantees all member species sovereignty over their properly claimed territories. Are you suggesting the Kral Dominion would take military action against human civilians if we decline your proposal?" The chamber's murmuring stopped. Several species in the inner ring shifted uncomfortably. Even in a hierarchy based on strength, there were lines that required careful political maneuvering to cross. Threatening civilian populations required proper justification, proper framing. Drakmar spread his clawed hands in a gesture his species used to indicate patient explanation. "I suggest nothing, Captain. I merely state the obvious. These systems lie in dangerous space. Pirates, raiders, hostile forces all pose threats to inadequately defended colonies. The Kral Dominion has maintained peace in our administered territories for 3 centuries. Not one civilian casualty from external threats in that entire period. Can humanity make such a claim?" It was a neat rhetorical trap. Either admit human defenses were inadequate and accept Kral oversight, or claim capability. Humanity hadn't demonstrated and risk being proven wrong through hostile action that could be blamed on pirates. "Humanity can make several claims," Alexandra said. "First, that our colonies are adequately defended according to concordance standards for systems of their size and development. Second, that we have maintained peaceful operations in all our territories since colonization began. Third, that we do not recognize any administrative authority over our sovereign systems except our own government. And fourth," she paused, letting the moment extend, "that we prefer to maintain our own defenses rather than depend on external oversight, no matter how well-intentioned." Drakmar's scaled features pulled into an expression his species used to indicate amusement. Your preferences are noted, Captain Chen. But preferences do not change mathematics. The Kral Dominion has 47 warships currently conducting exercises near human space. Your entire known fleet consists of 8 system defense cruisers and approximately 30 smaller craft. The mathematics are simple. So he was laying it out completely. Not just a proposal, but a threat backed by immediate military capability. He'd positioned his fleet before even presenting the administrative reorganization to the Concordance. This wasn't negotiation. It was a foregone conclusion dressed in diplomatic language. Alexandra felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear, recognition. She'd seen this before in tactical briefings and historical studies of aggressor species throughout human history. The moment when a predator decided the prey was cornered and helpless, when restraint became unnecessary because victory seemed inevitable. High Arbiter Velzen, she said, turning toward the center seat. Humanity formally requests a 48-hour recess to consult with Earth's government regarding this matter. This is a significant territorial question that requires proper consideration at the highest levels of our government. Velzen's bronze feathers ruffled slightly. War Chief Drakmar, does the Kral Dominion object to this reasonable request? Drakmar's translator rendered something that might have been a sigh. The Kral Dominion has no objection to humanity taking time to recognize reality. 48 hours is acceptable, but let me be clear. He turned to face Alexandra directly, his predator's gaze locked on her with absolute confidence. 3 generations. That's how long your species has existed in space. 3 generations of playing at civilization, building colonies on easy worlds, protected by the Concordance's peace from understanding what the galaxy truly is. The Kral Dominion has existed for 9,000 of your years. We have fought wars that consumed entire species before your people invented written language. When we make an offer like this, it is a courtesy extended to youth, a chance to accept reality peacefully rather than learn it through pain. He gestured at the holographic displays. Your colonies are soft. Your defenses are inadequate. Your people are children playing with tools they barely understand. Accept our administration, maintain your dignity and your trading rights, or refuse, and watch everything you've built become a lesson in why the galaxy's hierarchy exists. These are your choices. Use your 48 hours wisely. The chamber remained silent as Drakmar's words echoed through the vast space. Alexandra could feel the weight of calculation from every species present. This was how it had always been done. The strong taking from the weak, dressed in enough diplomatic language to maintain the fiction of civilized discourse. She stood perfectly still, her expression unchanged, and delivered her response with the calm of absolute conviction. Humanity rejects the Kral Dominion's proposal entirely. We will return in 48 hours with Earth's formal response to this matter. Thank you, High Arbiter, for granting our request. The chamber erupted in murmuring. Drakmar's expression shifted to something between anger and amusement. Several species in the inner rings exchanged what appeared to be surprised glances. Alexandra had just done what the Venturi, Margath, and Tolan had not. She'd refused completely, without qualification, without negotiation. High Arbiter Velzen raised one wing for silence. The request is granted. This session will reconvene in 48 standard hours for humanity's formal response. Until then, this matter is tabled for consideration. Alexandra bowed precisely to the center seat, turned, and walked from the chamber with the same controlled dignity she'd maintained throughout. Her neural implant was already vibrating with priority messages, but she waited until she'd reached her secure diplomatic quarters before accessing them. The first message was from Commander Webb. Well done. Earth's full response is being prepared. You bought us the time we needed. The second was from Admiral Catherine Park, head of Unified Defense Command. The Krall just made their last mistake. Let them position their fleet. Let them commit completely. When you deliver our response, make sure every species is watching. They all need to understand what comes next. Alexandra stood at the viewport of her quarters, looking out at the triple stars that burned in the void beyond Concordance Station. Somewhere out there, 47 Krall warships were moving into position near human space, certain of their victory, confident in their mathematics. They had no idea what humanity had been doing for the past 15 years. They'd seen the handful of system defense ships, the barely functional platforms, the soft colonists playing at civilization. They'd calculated humanity's strength based on what had been deliberately shown to them. They hadn't considered what might be hidden. They hadn't asked why a species capable of achieving faster-than-light travel in less than a century might be content to appear technologically inferior. They hadn't wondered why humanity's colonies seemed so lightly defended, or why a species with humanity's history of warfare might truly believe in preparing for peace while being ready for war. In 48 hours, she would return to that chamber. She would stand at humanity's podium in the outermost ring, representing the newest and least respected species in the Concordance. And she would teach War Chief Drakmar why the mathematics didn't work the way he expected. Human history had a term for what was about to happen. They called it a teaching moment. The galaxy was about to get an education. The 48 hours passed like a held breath. Alexandra Chen stood once again at humanity's podium in the outermost ring of the Concordance chambers, watching as representatives from 47 species settled into their positions. The architecture remained unchanged. Concentric rings radiating from High Arbiter Velzen's central seat, each ring a statement of galactic hierarchy. Humanity still occupied the seventh ring, the position reserved for the newest and least consequential members. But something had shifted in the way the other species watched her. The dismissive glances had been replaced by calculation. The polite disinterest had become focused attention. War Chief Drakmar stood at his podium in Ring 2, his scaled form radiating confidence despite the subtle tension in his posture. He'd spent the past 2 days positioning his fleet, making sure every species in the Concordance knew exactly how many warships he'd committed to this operation. The message was clear. Humanity's 48 hours of consideration would end with either capitulation or annihilation. High Arbiter Velzen's bronze feathers caught the light from the triple stars as he raised one wing for silence. Captain Chen, the Concordance recognizes humanity's delegation. You have prepared Earth's formal response to the Krall Dominion's proposal? Alexandra touched the control surface at her podium, and her voice carried through the chamber with perfect clarity. No nervousness, no desperation, just the calm statement of absolute fact. The United Earth Government has reviewed the Krall Dominion's territorial proposal. Our response is as follows. She paused, letting the moment extend, then read from the transmitted text with the precision of a legal document. The colonies of New Prosperity, Kepler's Hope, and Redemption are sovereign human territory established under Concordance Charter protocols. Any military incursion into these systems will be considered an act of war against humanity. Any hostile action against human civilians will be met with proportional response. This is humanity's only warning. We recommend the Krall Dominion reconsider their current course of action. The silence that followed lasted perhaps 3 seconds. Then, Drakmar laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber. not the polite amusement of diplomatic discourse, but genuine mirth at what he clearly considered absurdity. Proportional response, he repeated, his translator rendering the words with emphasis. Captain Chen, perhaps your government doesn't understand what proportional means in a military context. Let me educate you. He gestured, and a holographic display materialized above the chamber's center. The Kraal battle group currently positioned near your space consists of 12 dreadnoughts, 24 cruisers, and 11 destroyer screens. 47 warships representing more firepower than your entire known fleet possesses. Each of my dreadnoughts outmasses your largest system defense cruiser by a factor of 8. He pointed at the display, which now showed detailed specifications of Kraal military vessels. My flagship, Inevitability, alone, carries enough weaponry to reduce a planetary surface to molten glass. And you speak of proportional response? The mockery in his voice was unmistakable. Explain to this council what proportion of nothing equals something sufficient to threaten the Kraal dominion. Alexandra touched her podium's control surface again. A new holographic display materialized alongside Drakmar's, this one showing the Kraal fleet in precise tactical detail. Shield frequencies, reactor output specifications, tactical doctrine assessments, crew complement estimates, the exact position of every vessel in his battle group, and classified information that should have been impossible for humanity to obtain. The chamber's atmosphere changed instantly. Species throughout the rings leaned forward, their various forms of attention locked on the impossibly detailed intelligence now floating above them. We've been watching, War Chief Drakmar, Alexandra said, her voice unchanged. Your flagship, Inevitability, operates fusion reactors at 93% efficiency, which creates a distinctive thermal signature your shields don't quite mask. Your dreadnoughts use a shield rotation frequency that cycles every 47 seconds, efficient against most weapons, vulnerable during the refresh interval. Your tactical doctrine favors overwhelming frontal assault in geometric formations that maximize forward firepower, while leaving your flanks exposed for exactly 8 seconds during formation shifts. She gestured at the display. Your crews train extensively in offensive operations but have limited experience with defensive fleet actions, because the Kraal Dominion hasn't faced peer military opposition in 12 generations. Your communication protocols use quantum entanglement for flag-level commands, but your individual ship coordination relies on conventional faster-than-light transmission with a 0.4-second lag. Drakmar's expression had shifted from mockery to something harder to read. How did you... We've been watching, Alexandra repeated. We watch everything. Every fleet exercise you've conducted near our space. Every tactical drill. Every formation shift and weapons test. We've been collecting data since the day we joined the Concordance on every species that might someday decide our weakness was exploitable. She turned to face the entire council rather than just Drakmar. Humanity spent 3 generations learning a very specific lesson before we achieved faster-than-light travel. We learned that appearing weak while building strength is a survival strategy. We learned that intelligence gathered patiently is more valuable than fleets deployed hastily. And we learned that when someone threatens our civilians, when someone calculates that our lives are acceptable losses in their territorial expansion, we respond with absolute clarity. Ambassador Liss of the Tethran Commonwealth shifted in her Ring 3 podium, compound eyes reflecting what might have been concern or recognition or both. High Arbiter. Velzen's voice carried carefully measured neutrality. Captain Chen, you have delivered your government's position. War Chief Drakmar, does the Kraal Dominion wish to modify its proposal in light of this response? Drakmar's clawed hands gripped his podium's edges. Alexandra could see the calculation behind his predatory gaze. Anger at the intelligence breach. Pride demanding he not back down. Military pragmatism warring with political necessity. The Kral Dominion does not make threats lightly, nor do we withdraw from commitments once made. If humanity wishes to test whether their intelligence gathering has revealed anything that will save them, we will provide that education. Our fleet will proceed as planned. Then we understand each other, Alexandra said simply. Humanity looks forward to the lesson. The council session dissolved in a chaos of multilingual discussion. Alexandra maintained her position at the podium, projecting calm she didn't entirely feel, until High Arbiter Velzen declared the session concluded. She was halfway to her diplomatic quarters when Ambassador Liss intercepted her in a secondary corridor. The insectoid diplomat's compound eyes reflected the station's ambient lighting in complex patterns that Alexandra's briefings had taught her to recognize as distress signals. Captain Chen. Lys's translator rendered her clicking speech into careful standard language. May I speak with you privately? Alexandra gestured toward a small conference room designed for informal diplomatic conversations. Once inside, with privacy fields activated, Lys's composure cracked slightly. You've just guaranteed the Kral will attack, the ambassador said without preamble. Drakmar cannot withdraw now without destroying his credibility and the Dominion's reputation. Your intelligence revelation has humiliated him publicly. He will have to prove that knowing his tactics isn't enough to stop them. I know, Alexandra said. Your colonies will be attacked by 47 warships with the entire galaxy watching. Even with advanced intelligence, even with preparations, the mathematics are overwhelming. Surely Earth's government understands. We're counting on it. Alexandra met the ambassador's complex gaze with steady focus. They need to understand who we are, Ambassador. All of them. Every species in the concordance that's been calculating whether humanity represents opportunity or threat, whether our apparent weakness is real or performed. Lys's translator rendered something that might have been a distressed chirp. You're using your own colonies as bait. Millions of civilians are being evacuated as we speak, through what the Kral intelligence services will identify as routine colonial rotation transports if they're watching closely enough to notice. Alexandra's voice remained level. We've been preparing for this conversation since we joined the Concordance 15 years ago. We hoped we'd never need to have it. But if we must, then every species needs to witness the complete lesson. What lesson could possibly be worth this risk? Alexandra turned toward the conference room's small viewport, which showed a slice of the triple stars burning in the void beyond the station. That humanity doesn't bluff. That threatening our civilians has consequences. That the mathematics don't work the way they think. She looked back at Lys. Words won't teach them, Ambassador. Math will. Lys remained silent for a long moment. The Tethran Commonwealth cannot intervene. We have our own borders, our own populations to protect. If the Kral choose to see assistance to humanity as hostile action, we're not asking for intervention, Alexandra said. We're not asking for anything except that everyone watches closely. What happens next will answer questions about humanity that diplomatic sessions never could. After Lys left, Alexandra returned to her quarters and opened the encrypted channel to Earth. Commander Marcus Webb's image materialized in holographic form, transmitted across light years through quantum-entangled communication systems. The data transmission was effective, Webb said without preamble. Drakmar's military staff is currently tearing apart their intelligence services, trying to understand how we obtain that information. Their tactical council is divided between those recommending withdrawal and those demanding they proceed to prove the intelligence doesn't matter. Drakmar will proceed, Alexandra said with certainty. His pride demands it, and the Kral culture doesn't reward backing down from declared confrontations. Admiral Park agrees. Fleet positioning is complete. Defensive platforms are armed and waiting. Civilian evacuation is 92% complete. We'll have everyone clear before the Kral arrive. Webb's expression shifted slightly. Are you certain you want to be in system for this? The Perseverance is supposed to be a diplomatic vessel. Having you present sends exactly the message we need to send, Alexandra finished. That we're not afraid. That we're confident enough in our capabilities to have our diplomatic representative present during military action. The galaxy needs to see that confidence is warranted. Webb nodded slowly. Understood. The defense coordinator is Commander Sarah Okafor. She'll be directing the platform network. You'll maintain overall tactical authority but defer to her for detailed defensive operations. Acknowledged. What's the timeline? Kral fleet will reach New Prosperity in approximately 16 hours. They're not trying to hide their approach. Drakmar wants everyone to see this. Webb's image flickered slightly. Alex, when this starts, there's no stopping it. Once we demonstrate what we're actually capable of, the galaxy will know, Alexandra said. They'll know we've been hiding our strength. They'll know we've been preparing for war while smiling in council sessions. They'll know that humanity isn't what we pretended to be. She met Webb's gaze through the holographic connection. That's the point. Better they learn it this way, with a clear aggressor and justified response, than waiting for them to discover it in circumstances where we look like the threat. After the transmission ended, Alexandra stood at her quarters viewport and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, 47 Kral warships were moving into attack positions, confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. Somewhere else, human colonies were quietly emptying of civilians, defensive platforms were powering up weapons that hadn't been tested in combat, and stealth systems that the galaxy didn't know humanity possessed were activating across 3 star systems. The mathematics were about to change. The galaxy was about to get its education. The Kral battle group entered New Prosperity's system with the confidence of inevitable victory. War Chief Drakmar stood on the command deck of Inevitability, watching the tactical displays populate with sensor data. 12 dreadnoughts, 24 cruisers, 11 destroyers, 47 warships representing centuries of Kral military refinement, arranged in precise geometric formations that maximized overlapping fields of fire. The system's primary star burned yellow-white ahead of them, illuminating a standard colony configuration. Terrestrial planet in the habitable zone, gas giant in the outer system, asteroid belt providing mineral resources. Preliminary scans showed exactly what Kral intelligence had predicted: minimal defensive presence. 2 orbital platforms that read as antiquated particle beam weapons. A handful of what appeared to be sensor buoys scattered through the inner system, and 1 ship. The human diplomatic vessel is in system, his tactical officer reported. The Perseverance. Registry indicates it's Captain Chen's command. Single ship, reading as unarmed civilian configuration. Drakmar's scaled features pulled into an expression of contempt. She stayed. After all her confidence, after revealing our tactical data, she stayed in system with a civilian vessel to watch her colonies burn. He gestured toward communications. Hail that ship. Let's see if her courage remains when faced with the reality she's chosen. The communication channel opened. Alexandra Chen's image appeared in holographic form, her human features calm and composed, as if she were still standing at her concordance podium rather than facing down an invasion fleet. War Chief Drakmar, she said with the same professional courtesy she'd maintained throughout their diplomatic exchanges. "You've arrived precisely on schedule. We've been tracking your approach for the past 6 hours. Captain Chen." Drakmar kept his tone formal despite his contempt. "You have one final opportunity to show wisdom. Order your defensive platforms to power down. Instruct your colonists to prepare for Kral administration. Accept the inevitable with dignity, and unnecessary bloodshed will be avoided." Alexandra's expression didn't change. "War Chief, I'm going to give you coordinates. I recommend you investigate them before proceeding further." Despite himself, Drakmar felt a flicker of curiosity. "Coordinates? Consider it a teaching aid." Alexandra's image vanished as the communication channel closed, replaced by a simple data packet containing spatial coordinates in the system's outer asteroid belt. Drakmar stared at the coordinates for a moment, then gestured toward his tactical officer. "What's at that location?" "Running scans now, War Chief." The officer's claws moved across control surfaces. "Reading a small object, approximately 3 meters in diameter. Appears to be a probe or beacon of some kind. It's broadcasting something. Looks like a recorded message." "Display it." The holographic projector activated, showing a simple visual recording of Alexandra Chen standing against a neutral background. Her recorded voice carried the same calm certainty it had possessed during every diplomatic exchange. "You were warned. First lesson, we don't bluff." The display vanished. For exactly 2 seconds, nothing happened. Then, the coordinates where the probe had been located erupted in a sphere of annihilating energy that registered on every sensor in the Kral fleet. Simultaneously, the tactical displays screamed warnings as radiation signatures painted space with the unmistakable spectrum of antimatter detonation. "Evasive," Drakmar began, but the explosion's timing had been calculated with precision that suggested the humans had known exactly where his fleet would be positioned. 3 destroyers on his fleet's outer screen, closest to the detonation coordinates, simply vanished in the plasma wave. 2 cruisers that had been supporting the destroyer screen staggered as the radiation pulse overloaded their forward shields. "Damage report!" Drakmar's voice carried the edge of command even as his mind struggled to process what had just happened. Antimatter weapons weren't common in galactic warfare. The containment requirements were extreme, the manufacturing difficult. Humanity wasn't supposed to possess such technology, let alone deploy it with such precision. 3 destroyers destroyed, his tactical officer reported, claws trembling slightly. Cruisers, Pride's Edge, and Territorial Fang, showing critical shield failures, multiple hull breaches. "War Chief, the defensive platforms are powering up," the sensor officer interrupted. "Energy readings those aren't particle beam weapons. Signatures match high-energy plasma acceleration, military grade. They're targeting our damaged cruisers." Drakmar watched the tactical display update in real time. The 2 antiquated defensive platforms revealed themselves as something entirely different. Weapon systems housing plasma accelerators that shouldn't have been possible to mount on stationary installations. The energy requirements alone. The platforms fired. Twin beams of accelerated plasma crossed the space between the platforms and the damaged cruisers in less time than Drakmar's enhanced combat reflexes could process. The targeting was surgical, exploiting the exact shield vulnerabilities Alexandra had demonstrated knowledge of. The beams struck during the 47-second shield rotation cycle in the brief window when damaged shields couldn't compensate. Pride's Edge broke apart as superheated plasma vaporized its forward sections. Territorial Fang managed to activate emergency ablative armor, buying its crew 3 additional seconds of life before the sustained beam carved through to the reactor core. The entire engagement, from probe detonation to the destruction of 5 Krell warships, lasted 17 minutes. "All ships withdraw to defensive formation Epsilon," Drakmar ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting through his fleet's command channels. "Maximum shields, active countermeasures. Sensor sweep for additional threats." His fleet pulled back to a position beyond the immediate engagement range, and as they did, something impossible happened. Throughout the system, dozens of small objects began appearing on sensors. Not appearing because they just arrived, appearing because they deactivated stealth systems that the Kryal technology hadn't been able to penetrate. Sensor drones. Dozens of them, recording everything. "War Chief," his intelligence officer reported with barely concealed alarm, "those drones have been in system since before we arrived. They've recorded our entire approach, our formation positions, our response to the initial engagement, and they're transmitting, broadcasting on open galactic channels. Every species in the Concordance is watching this." Drakmar felt something cold settle beneath his scales. Not fear. He was Krau, bred for combat across 9,000 years of military refinement, but recognition. The humans hadn't just defended themselves. They'd staged this engagement as a demonstration, ensuring the entire galaxy witnessed what happened when someone threatened human colonies. The communication channel activated again. Alexandra Chen's image reappeared, and this time, Drakmar noticed what he'd missed before: the complete absence of surprise or concern in her expression. She'd known exactly how this would unfold. "You brought 47 ships, War Chief Drakmar," Alexandra said with the same professional courtesy she'd maintained throughout. "You now have 42 operational vessels. The mathematics are changing. You have 2 choices. Withdraw now and accept that humanity is more capable than you calculated, or continue and discover exactly how extensive your miscalculation was." She paused. "Choose carefully. The galaxy is watching, and we prefer to be known for mercy rather than brutality. But if you force us to demonstrate our full capabilities, we will do so with the same precision you've already witnessed." The communication channel closed. Drakmar stood on his command deck, surrounded by tactical displays showing his reduced fleet and the impossible reality that 5 of his ships had been destroyed in 17 minutes by defenses humanity wasn't supposed to possess. His officers waited for orders, their scaled features reflecting confusion and the first hints of something the Krell rarely experienced: doubt. But retreat was impossible. The entire galaxy was watching. To withdraw now would destroy not just his reputation, but the Krell Dominion's carefully cultivated image as a military power that could not be challenged by lesser species. Every territorial dispute the Dominion had leveraged through threat of force would be questioned. Every species currently under administrative oversight would recognize weakness. The mathematics had changed, yes, but they could be changed again through overwhelming force and absolute commitment. "All ships," Drakmar said, his voice carrying the certainty of a decision made, "prepare for full assault. Contact Krall Command. I want every available vessel redirected to human space immediately. If humanity wishes to demonstrate their capabilities, we will force them to reveal everything they possess." His tactical officer hesitated. "War Chief, requesting additional forces will take—" "Do it." Drakmar's clawed hand gestured toward the tactical display. "The humans are prepared for an engagement with 47 ships. Let's see how their mathematics work when facing 67, or 87, or however many vessels it takes to teach them that intelligence and advanced weapons don't compensate for insufficient numbers. As his fleet withdrew to regroup and await reinforcements, Drakmar watched the sensor readings from those impossible stealth drones, knowing that every species in the Concordance was analyzing the same data he was. Humanity had hidden capabilities that exceeded expectations. They'd positioned antimatter weapons, deployed advanced stealth technology, and maintained defensive platforms with military-grade weapons while appearing to possess only civilian infrastructure. The question now was whether they'd revealed everything or whether their demonstration had been carefully calibrated to show just enough to make retreat seem reasonable while hiding even greater capabilities. He would find out. The Kral Dominion would commit whatever force necessary to break human resistance, and in doing so, would force humanity to reveal the full extent of their hidden strength. The galaxy was watching. Let them witness what happened when a species 9,000 years old, with fleets that had conquered entire star sectors, brought their full might against 3 generations of upstart colonists who'd forgotten their place. The mathematics would change again. And this time, Drakmar would ensure the equation resolved in the Kral Dominion's favor. War Chief Drakmar had made many calculations in his military career, but requesting 20 additional warships to crush 3 human colonies would be remembered as either his greatest strategic commitment or his final mistake. The reinforcements arrived within 36 hours, a testament to how seriously Kral Command took the humiliation of losing 5 vessels to supposedly inferior defenses. 67 warships now moved through the void between stars, dividing into 3 strike forces. Drakmar would lead the primary assault on New Prosperity with 28 vessels. The other 2 forces, 20 ships each with 7 held in reserve, would strike simultaneously at Kepler's Hope and Redemption. If humanity had prepared elaborate defenses for one system, the Kral would discover whether they'd managed the same preparation across all 3 colonies. The galaxy watched through those impossible stealth drones, through sensor arrays positioned by species who decided this conflict warranted close observation, through diplomatic channels that carried real-time tactical assessments to every Concordance member. What had begun as a territorial dispute had transformed into something far more significant, a test of whether a species could hide military capability so completely that the galaxy's fundamental power assessments required recalculation. Alexandra Chen stood on the bridge of Perseverance, which had relocated to the system's outer edge after the first engagement. Her diplomatic vessel's sensor arrays, far more sophisticated than its civilian configuration suggested, painted a comprehensive picture of the approaching Kral forces. Commander Sarah Okafor's face occupied one of the holographic displays, transmitted from the defensive command platform that had been disguised as a commercial station in New Prosperity's orbital space. "They've split their forces," Okafor reported, her dark features composed but alert. "Intelligence assessment says they're trying to force us to reveal defensive capabilities across all 3 systems simultaneously. Then we accommodate them," Alexandra said. "How are the evacuation numbers?" "Final transports departed Kepler's Hope 40 minutes ago. All 3 colonies are at 0 civilian population except for volunteer defense coordinators." Okafor's expression remained professionally neutral, but Alexandra heard the subtle edge in her voice. "We're fighting for empty worlds, Captain. If we lose infrastructure we can rebuild. If we'd kept civilians in place, we'd be gambling with millions of lives to maintain a fiction that these colonies needed defending." Alexandra gestured toward the tactical display. "The colonies were always secondary. The primary objective is ensuring every species in the Concordance understands that threatening humanity carries consequences they can't calculate in advance. At Kepler's Hope, the Kral assault began with confidence born from overwhelming numerical superiority. 20 warships against what sensors identified as 3 defensive platforms and a minefield that the Kra'al tactical doctrine was specifically designed to clear. The lead vessels, 4 destroyers configured for minesweeping operations, advanced in precise formation, their sensor arrays identifying and cataloging the orbital mines that human colonists had apparently deployed in a desperate attempt at defense. The mines detonated, but these weren't simple explosive devices triggered by proximity sensors. They were fusion-pumped laser mines, single-use weapons that converted a fusion explosion's energy into coherent directed laser pulses lasting microseconds but carrying enough energy to slag armor plating at ranges that conventional mines couldn't achieve. The physics were straightforward. Fusion explosion channeled through lacing rods, amplified by the explosive's own radiation, directed toward pre-calculated targeting solutions. The Kra'al destroyer's shields, calibrated to defend against kinetic impacts and energy weapons, weren't configured to handle the specific wavelengths and intensities that the fusion-pumped lasers delivered. 3 destroyers simply ceased to exist. Their reactors breached and their crews vaporized before they could register what was happening. The 4th destroyer's shields managed to deflect the initial pulse, but overloaded catastrophically from the energy transfer, leaving the vessel dead in space with all power systems offline. The Kra'al cruisers pulled back, their formation disrupted by the sudden loss of their screening vessels. That's when the defensive platforms revealed their actual capabilities. What had appeared to be simple particle beam weapons were actually relativistic kinetic accelerators, mass drivers that used gravity manipulation technology to accelerate Pharaoh's projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed. The physics of relativistic kinetic weapons were beautiful in their terrible simplicity. Mass times velocity squared, but when velocity approached relativistic speeds, the energy involved became catastrophic. A 10-kilogram projectile traveling at 30% of light speed carried more kinetic energy than a strategic nuclear weapon. And these platforms fired volleys of 20 projectiles every 40 seconds. 2 Kra'al cruisers vanished in expanding clouds of superheated plasma and debris. A third managed to activate emergency thrusters, but the evasive maneuver couldn't compensate for weapons that traveled at a significant fraction of light speed. The projectile struck its engineering section, and the resulting energy transfer caused the vessel's reactor containment to fail spectacularly. At Redemption, the engagement followed a different pattern. The Kra'al forces approached cautiously, having received warnings from their counterparts at Kepler's Hope about the unexpected defensive capabilities. Their caution didn't save them. The human defensive doctrine at Redemption relied on layered weapon systems that exploited the Kra'al tactical doctrine's fundamental assumptions about how battles should progress. The first layer consisted of what appeared to be conventional missile platforms until the missiles activated. They were autonomous hunter-killers with adaptive targeting systems and enough processing power to execute coordinated tactical maneuvers without real-time control input. When Kra'al point defense systems began intercepting them using doctrine-standard countermeasures, the missiles adapted, changing approach vectors and attack patterns in real time. 3 Kra'al vessels found themselves overwhelmed by missiles that refused to follow expected behavior patterns. The hunter-killers exploited shield rotation cycles, targeted specific subsystems with precision that suggested military-grade intelligence on Kra'al ship architecture, and demonstrated coordination that indicated they were operating as a networked swarm rather than individual weapons. At New Prosperity, Drakmar watched the tactical reports from the other 2 systems with growing recognition that the humans had planned for exactly this scenario. They'd anticipated multiple simultaneous assaults, They'd positioned different defensive systems at each colony, forcing the Krell to face varied threats that couldn't be countered with a single tactical adjustment. "All forces, maximum defensive posture," he ordered. "We advance, but we advance cautiously. Scan for antimatter signatures, energy buildups, stealth deployments, anything that reads as non-standard. The humans want us to hesitate, to withdraw. We will not give them that satisfaction." His fleet moved forward in modified formation, shields at maximum, point defense systems active, every sensor array scanning for threats. They found Alexandra Chen's Perseverance, waiting at a position that should have been tactically insignificant, too far from the defensive platforms to support them, too distant from the planet to threaten any landing operations. "That diplomatic vessel," Drakmar said. "Target it. I want to know what it's really capable of." His tactical officer transmitted targeting solutions to 3 cruisers, energy weapons locked onto the civilian vessel that humanity's diplomatic representative had chosen to remain aboard throughout the entire engagement. Perseverance moved, not with the acceleration of a civilian vessel equipped with standard commercial thrusters. It accelerated with the performance envelope of a military craft designed for combat maneuvering, pulling vectors that would have liquefied an unprotected crew without advanced inertial compensation. The energy weapons fire that should have crippled a diplomatic ship struck empty space as Perseverance executed evasive patterns that demonstrated both sophisticated maneuvering systems and a pilot with military combat training. "War Chief, that vessel is equipped with military-grade systems," his sensor officer reported unnecessarily. "Reading active countermeasures, enhanced shields, and weapons lock warning. The diplomatic vessel is arming weapons." What emerged from Perseverance's concealed weapons bays shouldn't have been possible to mount on a vessel that size. Particle beam projectors that required power generation systems that should have needed 3 times the available space. Missile launchers housing munitions with targeting systems that adapted to countermeasures in real time. And something else. A weapons signature that Krell sensors struggled to classify. Alexandra's voice came across open communication channels, broadcasts not just to Drakmar's fleet, but to every sensor drone, every watching species, every diplomatic monitoring station throughout the Concordance. "War Chief Drakmar, you're witnessing the human doctrine that we hoped we'd never need to demonstrate. We don't build warships that look like warships. We build capability into every vessel we launch because our history taught us that civilian vessels become military targets when predators decide the rules don't apply to them." Her voice remained professionally calm, but carried an edge of something that translated across species barriers. Patience exhausted, consequences promised. "You're currently facing 1 diplomatic vessel, 3 defensive platforms, and mine networks in 3 systems. You've lost 17 ships. Your forces at Kepler's Hope and Redemption are requesting permission to withdraw. You have 1 opportunity to end this engagement with your remaining fleet intact." Drakmar's clawed hands tightened on his command console. "You're bluffing. 1 ship with hidden weapons doesn't change the mathematics. 25 operational warships in the system alone still." Perseverance fired. The particle beams struck 2 Krell destroyers with precision that suggested targeting systems far beyond what humanity had demonstrated possessing. The missiles that followed weren't conventional munitions. They were penetrator weapons designed to exploit the shield vulnerabilities Alexandra had revealed in the Concordance chambers. The Krell shields, still using the 47-second rotation cycle, created predictable windows of vulnerability that the human targeting systems exploited with surgical precision. 1 destroyer lost primary power. The second destroyer's shield generators overloaded catastrophically, leaving it vulnerable to follow-up strikes from the defensive platforms. 17 ships, Alexandra's voice corrected. You now have 23 operational vessels in this system, Warchief. The mathematics continue to change. How many more calculations do you need? Before Drakmar could respond, his long-range sensors began registering new contacts. Ships emerging from positions throughout the system, not dozens of vessels, but hundreds. Stealth systems deactivating to reveal a fleet that shouldn't have existed, that humanity had never acknowledged possessing, that represented a complete reassessment of human military capability. They weren't the massive dreadnoughts that species like the Kral built to project power through size and overwhelming firepower. They were smaller, faster vessels designed around principles that human naval doctrine had refined across centuries of maritime and space warfare before achieving faster-than-light travel. Frigates and destroyers built for coordinated fleet actions. Cruisers housing weapons systems that prioritized precision and adaptability over raw power. And carrier vessels launching wings of autonomous craft that moved with the coordination of networked intelligence. Drakmar's tactical display painted impossible numbers. 218 vessels. 218 ships that humanity had somehow built, maintained, and positioned without the Concordance's knowledge. The sensor returns showed military-grade signatures, advanced propulsion systems, and weapons configurations that suggested humanity had been developing combat doctrine specifically designed to counter the Kral tactical approach. "Impossible," Drakmar said, his translator rendering the word as something between shock and denial. "Our intelligence showed 8 system defense cruisers. You don't have the infrastructure to build—" "We've had 15 years, Warchief," Alexandra interrupted. 15 years of appearing primitive while building shipyards and systems we never told the Concordance about. 15 years of seeming content with minimal defensive capabilities while developing weapons systems designed specifically to counter every major military power's tactical doctrine. 15 years of being underestimated, dismissed, and threatened by species who assumed our 3 generations in space meant we were children playing at civilization. She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried not triumph, but something far more dangerous. Absolute certainty of capability and willingness to use it. The United Earth government authorized me to demonstrate our actual military strength. Not because we want war, not because we enjoy violence, but because the Concordance needs to understand that humanity's position in the outermost ring doesn't reflect our actual capability. It reflects our choice to appear non-threatening, while we determined whether this galaxy's civilization was one we could coexist with peacefully. The human fleet moved into tactical formation around the Kral forces, not attacking, but positioning with precision that demonstrated sophisticated command and control coordination. Each vessel maintained exact spacing, their formations suggesting extensive training and tactical doctrine developed through years of preparation the galaxy had never witnessed. "You have 2 options now," Alexandra said. "Withdraw your forces from all 3 systems and accept that humanity is not territory you can claim through threat of force. Or continue this engagement and discover that the mathematics you've seen so far represent restraint, not limitation. Choose carefully. The galaxy is watching, and how you choose will determine whether the Kral Dominion is remembered as a power that recognized its miscalculation, or as an example of what happens when predators mistake patience for weakness." On Concordance Station Zenith, High Arbiter Velzen watched the tactical displays with the calculating attention of someone reassessing 15 years of assumptions. Ambassador Liss stood beside him in the observation chamber, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic projection of human fleet strength that had materialized as if from nowhere. "They hid 200 ships," Liss said quietly. "They joined the Concordance with capabilities that would have placed them in Ring 3 or even Ring 2. and they chose the outermost ring. They let every species dismiss them while building military strength that rivals some of our oldest members. The question, Velzen replied, is what they intend to do with that strength now that it's revealed. Species don't hide capabilities this extensive without strategic purpose. In New Prosperity's system, Drakmar made his final calculation. 67 ships had become 50 operational vessels across 3 systems, facing combined human forces that now numbered over 300 craft. The Krael could continue fighting. Pride demanded it. Honor suggested it. Tradition supported it. But mathematics didn't lie. His intelligence had failed. His assessment had been wrong. And continuing this engagement would result not in glorious victory but in catastrophic defeat that would cripple the Kral Dominion's actual military strength for generations. All Kral forces, he said into the fleet-wide channel, his voice carrying the weight of a decision that contradicted every instinct his species had cultivated across 9,000 years. Withdraw from human space. We disengage. The withdrawal took 3 hours. Human forces maintained tactical positions throughout, not pursuing but ensuring the Kral retreat proceeded without attempts to salvage Pride through final desperate strikes. Alexandra remained on Perseverance's bridge, watching the censor returns paint the story of a fleet learning that overwhelming numerical superiority meant nothing when the calculations were based on fundamentally incorrect assumptions. When the last Kral vessel transitioned to faster-than-light travel, leaving human space behind, she opened a channel to Earth. Admiral Catherine Park's image materialized, the older woman's features showing satisfaction tempered by recognition of consequences. Clean engagement, Park said. Casualties? 0. All colonies were evacuated as planned. We lost 4 defensive platforms and took minor damage to 6 fleet vessels. The Kral lost 32 ships and withdrew with another 18 damaged. Alexandra's voice remained professional, but carried an edge of something that might have been relief. The galaxy watched everything. The stealth drones broadcast the entire engagement across Concordance channels. Then, they understand now, Park said. They understand we don't bluff, we don't negotiate from weakness, and we've been preparing for this conversation since we first encountered galactic civilization. How's the Concordance responding? High Arbiter Velzen has requested an emergency session. Every species wants answers. How we built this fleet, where we built it, why we hid it. Alexandra turned from the tactical displays to face the holographic projection of Earth's Defense Command Admiral. What do I tell them? Park's expression shifted to something that Alexandra recognized from their years serving together. Not arrogance, not triumph, but the cold certainty of someone who'd made difficult strategic calculations and now lived with their consequences. Tell them the truth. Humanity observed this galaxy for 15 years before revealing ourselves. We watched species rise and fall based on perceived military strength. We saw the Venturi, Margath, and Talon absorbed by powers that calculated their weakness was exploitable. We recognized that appearing strong would make us an immediate threat, while appearing weak would make us eventual prey. She paused, letting that assessment settle. So, we chose a third option. We appeared exactly weak enough to be dismissed, but not worth exploiting. We built defenses in systems we never acknowledged claiming. We developed weapons doctrine designed to counter every major power's tactical approach, and we waited to see if anyone would give us reason to demonstrate what we'd actually been doing while sitting quietly in the outermost ring. The Kral gave us that reason, Alexandra said. And now, the galaxy knows. Return to Concordance Station. Face whatever diplomatic consequences this revelation creates. but make absolutely certain every species understands. We revealed this strength because we were forced to defend our civilians, not because we're seeking to expand our influence through military force. The emergency concordance session convened 18 hours later. Alexandra stood at humanity's podium in the outermost ring, a position that now seemed almost satirical given what every species had witnessed. The chamber buzzed with multilingual discussions that ranged from outrage at humanity's deception to grudging respect for the strategic patience it had demonstrated. High Arbiter Velzen called for silence, his bronze feathers catching the triple starlight as he addressed the assembly directly. Captain Chen, the concordance requires explanation. Your species has demonstrated military capabilities far exceeding those you acknowledged when joining this body. You concealed fleet strength that rivals some of our most established members. The question before this council is whether humanity's deception represents a threat to concordance security or a legitimate defensive strategy. Alexandra had prepared for this moment, had worked with Earth's diplomatic staff to craft language that would balance honesty with strategic necessity. But standing in that chamber, facing the calculating attention of 47 species reassessing their fundamental assumptions about humanity, she chose to speak with the same directness that had characterized every exchange with Drakmar. High Arbiter, honored representatives, humanity's apparent weakness was a deliberate strategic choice. We observed this galaxy before revealing ourselves, and we recognized that demonstrating advanced military capability would make us an immediate focus of threat assessment and potential preemptive action. We chose instead to appear exactly as threatening as the newest member species might reasonably be, capable of basic self-defense but not ambitious enough to challenge established powers. She gestured toward the holographic displays that still showed tactical recordings from the engagement. The Kral Dominion's attack revealed why we made that choice. War Chief Drakmar calculated that humanity's apparent weakness justified military action against our civilians. He positioned 67 warships based on intelligence, showing 8 system defense cruisers. He made every tactical decision based on assumptions we deliberately cultivated, that we were children playing at civilization, that our 3 generations in space meant inadequate preparation, that our diplomatic courtesy reflected actual weakness rather than strategic patience. Ambassador Liss spoke from her Ring 3 podium, her translator rendering careful words. You let us all believe you were vulnerable. You let the Venturi fall, and the Margath and the Talon, without revealing you possessed strength that might have deterred their absorption. Yes, Alexandra said simply, because revealing that strength would have made humanity the target, or would have obligated us to become the galaxy's defender against powers like the Kral. We joined the Concordance seeking peaceful coexistence, not military entanglement. We hoped, her voice carried genuine regret, that we'd never need to demonstrate our actual capabilities. But you prepared for war while hoping for peace, Velzen observed. We prepared for survival while hoping for peace, Alexandra corrected. Human history taught us that species survive by hoping for the best while preparing for the worst. The Kral forced us to reveal what we'd prepared. Now the galaxy knows, and every species must recalculate their assumptions about human strength and human intentions. She turned slowly, addressing the entire chamber rather than just the High Arbiter. Humanity is not seeking territorial expansion. We're not demanding elevated status in Concordance hierarchy. We're not threatening any species that hasn't threatened us. But we will not be subjugated, absorbed, or dismissed as prey for species that mistake diplomatic courtesy for exploitable weakness. The mathematics have changed. Humanity will defend our territories, our civilians, and our sovereignty with whatever force proves necessary. That is our only demand, that our existence be accepted rather than calculated as opportunity. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then War Chief Drakmar, present via holographic projection from his damaged flagship, spoke with a voice that carried neither mockery nor threat, only grim acknowledgement. The Kral Dominion withdraws all territorial claims on human space. We acknowledge humanity's defensive capability and recognize that further military action would be... He paused, his translator struggling to render the concept his species rarely acknowledged inadvisable. Other species began speaking then, some demanding humanity be sanctioned for deception, others arguing that no concordance protocols had been technically violated. The session continued for hours, but Alexandra recognized that the critical moment had passed. Humanity had revealed its strength, demonstrated its willingness to use force in defense of its people, and established that the galaxy's assumptions about human capability required complete revision. 3 days later, the Concordance voted. Humanity would remain a member in good standing, subject to enhanced transparency protocols regarding military deployments, but formally recognized as possessing the defensive capability to maintain sovereignty over all claimed territories. The resolution passed by a narrow margin that reflected species calculating whether humanity represented future threat or potential ally. Alexandra transmitted the results to Earth, then stood at her quarters viewport, watching the triple stars burn in the void beyond Concordance Station. Somewhere out there, humanity's hidden fleet was returning to the systems the galaxy had never known existed. The deception had worked. Humanity had bought itself 15 years to build strength while avoiding becoming an immediate target. But that deception's success had required something that still sat uneasily in her thoughts. They'd let other species fall. They'd watched the Kral absorb territories while remaining silent about their ability to potentially intervene. They'd chosen humanity's security over broader galactic justice. She'd made similar calculations during her military career, choosing missions carefully, accepting that some battles couldn't be fought without compromising larger strategic objectives. But this felt different, larger, the kind of choice that civilizations rather than individuals made that defined what kind of power humanity would become in this galaxy. Her neural implant vibrated with an incoming message from Admiral Park. The Tethrin. Commonwealth has requested a private meeting to discuss mutual defense coordination. 5 other species have made similar inquiries. They're reassessing their strategic positions now that they know humanity isn't as vulnerable as they'd calculated. Recommendations? Alexandra composed her response with the same careful precision she'd maintained throughout the entire crisis. Engage diplomatically, but commit to nothing immediately. We revealed our strength because we were forced to defend ourselves. Let's see if the galaxy recognizes we prefer peace, or if they simply recalculate us as a different kind of threat. The mathematics had changed. The galaxy had learned that humanity's position in the outermost ring reflected strategic choice rather than actual capability. That 3 generations in space didn't mean inadequate preparation. That patience could be mistaken for weakness until the moment it became demonstration of strength. Now came the harder calculation, determining what kind of power humanity would become, and whether the strength they'd revealed would deter future aggression or simply invite more sophisticated threats from species who understood that the newest members of the Concordance had been underestimated once and wouldn't be again. The galaxy was watching, and humanity, whether they'd wanted it or not, had just introduced themselves not as the vulnerable newcomers seeking protection within galactic civilization, but as a species that planned carefully, struck precisely, and taught its lessons with mathematics that didn't work the way predators expected. The education had only just begun.